Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. According to the February 24th article in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, former county treasurer of Madison County, Illinois, Democrat Fred Bathon, admitted in federal court that tax sales from 2005 to 2008 were fixed to benefit politically connected insiders in the business of lending money to landowners in arrears. Fearing a flood of lawsuits, Madison County Board Chairman Alan Dunstan has called for Mr. Bathon and his co-conspirators, not taxpayers, to reimburse affected property owners. Our guest today is Republican Mike Walters, a member of the Madison County Illinois Board. He represents the people of Godfrey and District 7. Mr. Walters is here today to discuss his views regarding the legal difficulties created for the county by the former treasurer. Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser.
Well, thanks for having me, Lee. I appreciate it.
So let's just do just a little bit of background first, and then we'll get into the main subject here of the former county treasurer. Yeah, you're a member of the Madison County Illinois County Board.
Yes, I've been on there since 2006. Since
2006. And you're one of 29 members of that board, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you do before that got you elected to the board?
Well, I was a trustee in Godfrey, got elected in '99 and then 2003. And then Steve Stobbs, who is now a judge, decided to move over and become a judge, and it became open, and I was selected to take over for him, and then I won the election in 2006, and I've won 2 more since then.
Oh, so you're good to go. And when do you face election next?
I'm not up till 2014.
Okay. So with a year next year. Wow, time goes by fast.
Yeah, no, 2016 is when I run again. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I lied to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, you've got some time then.
Yes, I do.
Fred Bathon is a fellow that I have known for many, many, many years. And not friends, just I've known him from around the courthouse. I've talked to him on numerous occasions. And so just full disclosure, this is a man that I know, and that everything that we say here it's my opinion. This is your opinion. Right. There is a legal case which is going on, although Mr. Bathon, according to news reports, has pled guilty in federal court, but apparently there still are some legal things going on, and so we're not here trying to influence the outcome of that. Right. But we are making personal comments, right?
Correct.
Right.
That is correct.
Okay. So everything we say is from our point of view. We're not making legal assertions here.
That's correct.
I wanted to make sure we get that on the record so that everybody understands. Just so that the audience is aware that Mr. Bathon had been the county auditor for some period of time,
right,
and then moved over and became the Madison County treasurer for a period of time, and then abruptly resigned. I believe it was in 2009. Right. And one of the other things that I guess I'm going to let you talk about, what a tax sale is and what that's all about. You're familiar with?
Yes.
To be able to describe that?
Yes.
Okay. So let's just start from there. Mr. Bathon was the treasurer, and when somebody can't afford to pay their property taxes, something happens, and take it from there.
Well, when an individual either forgets to pay or cannot afford to pay their taxes by the end of the year, we have a tax sale. And what happens is there's our tax buyers that come in and they bid on the taxes. So
these past due taxes.
Yes, the past due taxes. So
they're planning to give the county the money that the homeowner should have given them.
That is correct.
Okay.
And what they will do then is once it gets onto the auction, the piece of property will come up, and at the point when Mr. Bathon was running it, He just had individuals sit in the seats where the county board has our meetings. And he would call out the piece of property, and then people would raise their hand and yell out 18%. And then he would pick the person that was the first one to yell 18%. Then what's supposed to happen is then the next person will bid if they want it at 17, 16, 15, and keep going down until somebody feels comfortable. And what happens then is if an individual, let's say their tax bill is $1,000, and somebody buys it for 5%. That means as soon as that is sold, the individuals that did not pay their taxes will then have to reimburse the tax buyer 5%, $1,000 plus 5%, so $1,050. And after, I believe it's 6 months, it then goes from 5% to 10%. And then it goes from 10%, I believe, up to 15% after a year. So the problems that we were having with 18% is the individuals already couldn't pay the taxes.
Well, let's pause for just a second. There's a range of interest rates that could have been charged by the tax buyers of the tax delinquent people that they're buying these taxes for, right?
Yes.
And I believe that range ran somewhere from as low as 3 or 4%?
1%.
1%. It would go down.
I think it can go down to 0%, but
okay.
It's...
So some low number, and the maximum that was allowed to be charged was 18%.
Right.
Okay. And so, again, just to review, somebody hadn't paid their taxes, somebody else steps forward and says, okay, county, I'll pay the taxes in lieu of this individual, and then they'll pay me.
Correct.
Right. And they're going to, and they'll pay me some interest.
Correct.
And the tax sale is actually to determine, one, who gets to buy the taxes,
right,
and what the interest rate is going to be.
Correct.
And that's what you were getting at,
right,
is that there were people who were starting at the top instead of saying, I'll bid 3.
Well, it always starts at the top, and then they bid it down. But when Mr. Bathon was there the last few years, it wasn't being bid down.
So we're talking about from the year 2005 through 2008,
I believe was
the last time. Those are the years that, at least according to the newspapers, when this was going on.
Correct. Well, and the problem that we have is that if you bid 18%, if you haven't paid reimbursed the tax buyer, you're now paying them 108% of what it was. So if you're already at $1,000, now you're at $2,160. It's very hard for somebody to come up with that money when they couldn't come up with $1,000 in the first place. Mm-hmm. Well, the understanding was that what Fred was doing, and again, this is just what I've heard, I'm not claiming that Fred did this, was that he collaborated with some of the tax buyers that you would just bid 18% and nobody would bid down.
And they'd cut it off right then.
Yes.
It wasn't like, who bid 18? 18, right. 17, nobody ever said 17, correct, 16, that's the allegation.
That's the allegations, and also the other allegations are that some of the tax buyers that were able to donate a little bit more to Mr. Bathon's campaign were able to sit in the front seat. Which,
now this is an allegation.
Allegations, I have no proof. I was not there.
Right. And to be fair, in the Post article, of those who were mentioned, they or representatives of them all said, hey, no, there was nothing like this going on. Right?
Correct. That's what they're claiming.
They're saying that this did not happen, and they intend to defend themselves.
That is correct. And again, as you said, this is just my opinion. These are the things that I've heard. And so the front people usually got the bids, and they would walk away with the most money. I mean, 2 years we had 82%, 1 year at 18%, then we went to 99%, and then 97% of the taxes were being sold at the 18%.
Now, what about other counties throughout Illinois? What were they doing?
They were doing it more in the way that Mr. Prenzler is now doing it, where we have a computer, and when the bid goes up, they start hitting the buttons, and then whoever gets it in first gets the 18%. Then it goes down to 17%. And they were averaging, I want to say, anywhere from 3 to 5%.
Well, I should have asked the more specific question of, while during those years the average was close to 18%. In other counties and other places in Illinois, what was their interest rate average?
Between 3 to 5%.
So there was a huge discrepancy
Yes.
between Madison County and other counties in Illinois.
That is correct.
Okay. So now when the tax buyer buys the taxes and then pays the county, which is the whole objective here,
Right,
which is why the county is running this auction to begin with, is to collect past due monies that weren't paid by homeowners. And so the county's whole at that point, right?
Correct.
The county's whole. The tax buyer pays the county the past due taxes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So if the homeowner doesn't pay the tax buyer, then what happens?
Well, I believe it's after 3 years, they can then take over the mortgage or take over ownership of the home from that individual. And that's...
So the homeowner loses all their equity
correct.
In the property.
Correct. Plus
so if they had paid down their mortgage or had no mortgage, then they would just lost control of the property that they owned.
The tax buyer would then take over the deed of the home.
Right.
And plus they still have to pay the 3 years of interest. And like I said, it's after 2.5 years, it's 108%. And we do have people in this county that can't afford that. And Mr. Bathon and some of the tax buyers took advantage of that. And, you know, I don't beseech anybody for wanting to become wealthy, but they're becoming wealthy on the backs of the people in a fashion that many people believe is immoral and unethical. I do have a problem with that because as a county board member, we're there to watch out for the taxpayers, not for the tax buyers, not for the county-wide office holders. We're there for the taxpayers. And in this instance, they were taken advantage of in my mind, in a very corrupt way.
Mm-hmm. You weren't, or you were on the board during
Yes.
part of this.
Yes.
Do you have any inkling that this was going on? Did you hear anything about this?
No. I was on the tax cycle committee, and I read an article today that one of our countywide officers was trying to indicate that the tax cycle committee knew this and we did nothing. And blaming us is as silly as you want to blame the House of Representatives and the Illinois Senate for what Rod Blagojevich was doing. I mean, they weren't there when Mr. Blagojevich was doing what he was claimed to be doing. We weren't there when Mr. Bathon was doing what he was being indicted for. Mm-hmm. There were people that were there that were countywide individuals, and the question we've always had is, what were you doing when this was going on? And they say, we brought it to the tax cycle. No, they didn't. They did not bring it to the tax cycle committee. I was on that committee.
What is a tax cycle committee? What's your function?
Well, we work with, there's about 18 different committees, and what happens is that each department reports to a committee. That committee has to approve the bills that are needed. In this instance, we have the treasurer, the clerk was in the meeting with us at the tax cycle committee, but that's what they call it. But we have to oversee what they pay and what they buy. And Mr. Bathon would report, you know, we did the tax cycle and we sold the pieces of property. He really didn't go in depth into what percentage it was, but I read today that one of the countywide officers said that he did the heavy lifting, and it was because of his hard work that this came to fruition. And he's a good friend of mine. I don't agree with what he's saying because this didn't come to fruition or come to the public until the Republicans held a press conference. And since that day we held a press conference, all we heard from the county-wide officials is we're being political. And if taking care of the taxpayers is being political, that's fine. But not one of those county-wide officials ever came out and said what he did publicly was wrong until maybe a year or two later when they were, I guess, up for elections, and then they could say that what they thought Mr. Bathon did was wrong. But it was the Republicans that brought it forward. We were the ones that stepped out in front of this. Again, I think the terminology the gentleman used was the heavy lifting. The only heavy lifting that I saw from some of the countywide officials was they were lifting the curtains up over everybody's eyes so we couldn't see what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Now, the long-time now county board chairman, Alan Dunstan, and I know that you have mentioned his name previously in other discussions and asked the question, well, where was he and what was he doing when all of this was going on? And I asked you, as a member of this tax cycle committee, if you knew what was going on, and you said no. Do you suspect, or does anybody suspect, that somebody like the chairman had any inkling of what Mr. Bathon was doing?
Well, I don't know if the chairman knew. He wasn't in the hearing, but there are two. The treasurer has to have somebody in there. The clerk has to have an individual in there, and the state's attorneys.
The county
clerk and the state's attorney's office has to have an individual in there to oversee what is going on.
So, at each tax sale?
Yes.
So there's the treasurer's there.
Yes.
The county clerk has a representative there.
Yes.
And the county state's attorney's office has a representative there. So they, during those years 5, 6, 7, 8, they had representatives in that room.
Yes, they did.
Okay. And your point then is?
Well, I'm not pointing fingers that said they did anything wrong. What I'm saying is, what were they doing? Why didn't they come forward? I mean, you've got a lot of people out there that point fingers at individuals that have been told of a problem and then they didn't do anything about it, and then they want to implement the person that was told the problem and say it's their fault. Well, I'm not implementing that either of these two did anything wrong or illegal. My question is, well, what took you so long? After 82%, if you didn't come forward, then you had 99%. I didn't hear them coming forward and saying this is wrong. Now, I wasn't in every meeting. I wasn't in the behind-the-scenes meetings. Maybe they were saying it. I wasn't privileged to that. But being a county board member, I was involved in the tax cycle meetings, and we weren't informed what was going on behind the scenes.
Now, of course, obviously I don't speak for them, but I could almost hear them saying, hey, we all know Fred. He was he was a constitutional officer, which meant that he didn't report to the county board, right?
No.
Treasurer doesn't report. The only thing the treasurer gets from the county board is money to run his office, right?
Right.
His activities are protected by, because he is the treasurer. He's like independent of everybody else. And so, hey, we know Fred. He was, in my opinion, a tough guy to get along with. Some have actually used the word bully. And, you came and crossed Fred Bathon at your own risk.
Right. Yeah, and there were many people that I don't want to say didn't like Fred, but they weren't exactly friendly with each other. And I will say, I know that the clerk at the time and Mr. Bathon did not see eye to eye. And that's why I was surprised. I thought he would have maybe mentioned it a little bit more. He says that he did. And like I said, maybe he did in some other meetings that we weren't at or we didn't attend. But I don't, when it comes to Mr. Dunstan, Alan Dunstan, he did not have somebody in the meeting at the time. And I'm not here pointing fingers. I'm here telling you what I saw and what I view happened.
So has the problem been corrected now?
Yes, I believe that I give Kurt Prenzler most of the credit on this. He's the new treasurer.
The new treasurer elected in 2010?
Yes, and he went and brought in the computers to make it more fair, so that you can sit anywhere in the room and be heard just as easily as anybody else.
So they're not shouting. It's not like the old tobacco,
Yeah.
I got to. No, it's not like that.
No.
It was like that.
Yes, it
was. But it's not like that anymore.
It is not like that
Everybody
anymore.
sits at a computer, and then they can see. It's almost like a video game.
Yes.
You can see it on the screen.
Very good example. Yes.
Right.
And so Kurt has brought the percentages down under. I believe this time it was right around 5% or a little bit under. He indicated that what he has done with this tax sale compared to the year when it was 97 or 99% is he saved the taxpayers upwards of $1.9 million. And that was the delinquent taxpayers.
Okay. The ones who hadn't paid their taxes.
Correct.
So
correct.
in getting them lower interest rather than 18% interest.
Yes. So he saved them $1.9 million.
I believe the number is actually that the average this last tax sale, if I recall correctly, was 3.7%.
That could be right. I don't, my fear is if I say 3.5, then people are going to be, he's exaggerating. So if I go over, they can't come back and say, he's a homer.
I'll say it. I think that's what I read was 3.7, which is a far cry. And anybody who knows anything about money, it's a big difference to be paying 4% interest on past due taxes versus 18%, especially when it doubles every 6 months.
Yes. And look at people who have credit cards. I mean, they're paying 18, 20%, and it's killing them. Mm-hmm. If they can transfer it to another card and get 4 or 5%, some people will do that.
So as I mentioned in my introduction, there is now concern among some officials in Madison County that, and there are attorneys who are already either filed or talking about filing what's called a class action lawsuit for those people who were delinquent and wound up having to pay 18% to the tax buyers.
Yes,
so talk about that.
Well, John Barberis has started the class action lawsuit. He is going to file, or he already has filed, and I think he is
an attorney.
He is an attorney, yes, and he has filed. At this point, I want to say 3 or 4 individuals have come forward, and what they're trying to do is to get their money back. I believe one person indicated that they had $8,000 and had to pay $22,000 by the time it was all over and done with. And these are people that just can't afford that. And some people, from my understanding, have lost their homes. I don't know how you get somebody their home back, but something has to be done. Somebody needs to be held accountable for this. Mr. Bathon is one of them, and whoever the attorney wants to, or I think the feds want to go after, then we just need to make sure that we make these individuals whole.
Well, why do you feel that it's unfair that these people come after the deep pockets of Madison County?
Oh, I never said it wasn't fair. People are
saying... Why would you prefer that they not do that then?
Well, the reason why individuals don't want them to is then that becomes taxpayers have to reimburse other taxpayers for what Mr. Bathon and other individuals did to the delinquent taxpayers. So if they do come after Madison County and we are named in there, then we do have to defend it. We're going to have to, pay a lot of money for this. I mean, then you compare this to what they're trying to throw on Kurt Prenzler. What he did with the bonds is minuscule for what we're going to pay if we're named in this lawsuit. I hope we're not named in the lawsuit. Madison County did not profit from this. However, Mr. Bathon did, the tax buyers did, and whoever received any money from Fred Bathon's PAC, Political Action Committee, they also have, this was a win situation for them because the money that they are receiving, some of it is coming from these tax buyers. And in my view, anybody that has received money from Mr. Bathon needs to return it, give it to a charity, or do something else with it, because if not, in my mind, you've actually gained from the woes of the taxpayers.
Mm-hmm. Does the county have its own attorney? I mean,
well, we would have Mr. Gibbons as the state's attorney, so he would be the one that would defend us, or somebody in his office.
So yes. The state's attorney's office would.
Right.
Have you been advised at all as to whether they think that there's merit? What I was actually thinking was that the article in the Post, the attorney who represents Mr. Bathon says he never personally profited from any of this, that all that happened was that he collected money and made the county whole.
Well,
so my question has the county been put on the spot? Does Mr. Gibbons, who is the state's attorney, think that there is a case here against the county, or are you feeling pretty comfortable that no, it's not going to be public money that's going to be used to reimburse these people who got suckered?
Right. Now, I have not spoke with Mr. Gibbons on this, what he feels. I've talked to Mr. Dunstan about it, and he's indicated that he doesn't see that the county made a profit or did anything wrong in this instance, other than we had a countywide officer who was doing something, I would say, inappropriate. But I don't know if there's anything they can do to come after the county. Now, let's face it, we're in a judicial hellhole where we're number 3 in the entire, not just in the state, in the entire country, a judicial hellholes, which means we're one of the worst judicial places to have a case heard. So, and when I look at some of the cases, it's sue one, you sue everybody. So I don't know if they can even name us in the lawsuit. That's more something Mr. Gibbons would have to get into. But if they are able to, I'm sure that they will.
We got about 3 minutes left.
Okay.
And maybe we'll have to have Mr. Gibbons come and comment at the appropriate moment in the future. Is there anything more that you would like to cover in this next couple of minutes?
Well, I kind of want to talk a little bit about my feelings on Mr. Prenzler and what has happened to him since he's been put into his office. He was elected.
This is the new treasurer.
This is the new treasurer. He took over from a gentleman who he defeated in 2010. This gentleman sold over $40 million worth of bonds after the election, after he lost. And he bought them outside of the guidelines. Now, guidelines are basically, this is what you need to do. Don't sell the bonds after, I think it's 2 or 3 years, with a maturity over 2 or 3 years. Well, he went ahead and did that. Mr. Prenzler does what, in the minds of many, the moral and ethically right thing, and takes these bonds and puts them into the guidelines, which that's what guidelines are for.
Right.
He's been crucified for 2 years that he's lost taxpayers' money. In my mind, Kurt Prenzler didn't lose anything. It was his predecessor that bought the bonds outside of the guidelines that caused the problem. Mr. Prenzler did, again, the morally and ethically right thing by putting them within the guidelines. And you have the same people who didn't say a word about Mr. Bathon, who now we see did something illegal, blaming that Kurt Prenzler did something illegal. Now, selling those bonds, was that the right thing? I don't know. I'm not a financial person. I mean, I guess he could have come to the board and asked us for guidance. But I get a little fed up when I see people that blast him month after month after month for doing something, in my mind, was the morally and ethically right thing. When did we get to the point when being morally and ethically right was a terrible thing? In this county, that's what it's come to, because every meeting they go after Mr. Prenzler.
Very briefly, he was within his legal rights to sell these bonds?
Well, yes, he was.
When he did, okay.
Yes, when he did.
So he was. And so that was a political decision that he made, as opposed to a legal issue. Right?
I think it was more of he felt it was morally and ethically right because he had guidelines. That's why he did it.
We're out of time, but we'll have to have you back at some point in the future when this case has moved forward. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
I've been speaking with Mike Walters. He is a member of the Madison County Board representing Godfrey, Illinois, District 7. This is a very complicated issue. You might want to go to, if you want more, go Google it and learn more about it. And for those that want to show this to others, go to YouTube and show it. Thanks. Bye.